truth, logic, common sense, that gut feeling, and yes, even a little psychoanalysis. As we are once again together, you and I. We are once again together, you and I, to move forward to get justice through understanding with the federal lawsuit that has been filed by alleged victims against Tim Ballard. Folks, this will be my third recording that I am doing on this whole situation. The first one being an overview with a victim, along into the second one where she talks about her narrative and everything that happened to her. Y'all, federal judges are going to look at this lawsuit, and it's going to be something else, y'all. All I know is this. Utah is one thing, the federal government is another, and the federal judiciary is really another animal in and of itself. So, the major overarching question is, did Tim Ballard use an anti-trafficking organization to traffic women? Was there money laundering? Was there sexual assault? Sexual harassment, whatever that is being alleged in this lawsuit? We're going to find out what's going to happen very soon on all of it, y'all. I have this feeling deep down in my heart. I'm not clairvoyant or psychic or none of that stuff. I'm just an old country girl from Tennessee that feels like the shit's about to hit the fan, y'all. So I'm going to go on to the next alleged victim in all this. And really, the one of the main reasons that I wanted to do this series is because I am sick and damn tired of people getting away with what they get away with just because they have power and money. And so Tim Ballard, he better just start shelling out the bucks. I'm sure he's already doing that with his counter lawsuit in Utah. He's had of 6 suits against him, civil suits. He's had 2 dismissed, but the Utah courts, they're not going to dismiss the other 4. Now, would we know more if Tim Ballard's attorneys get with these women in these other 4 lawsuits and offers them a big sum of money? Then maybe we'll know a little more now, won't we? But ultimately, if it comes down to it, at this point, even if he was willing to settle in the state of Utah there with these 4 lawsuits, these women are serious as hell. They have filed this in federal court. So let's just move forward. We're going to the next alleged victim, who is a Mary Hall, and it is inside the federal lawsuit. I'm going to read her narrative. We'll just think about the other alleged victim that we've already covered. See if you can see any patterns, see any similarities, either coming from Tim Ballard or from these women. So here we go. Exhibit F, Statement of Mary Hall. In October of 2021, I went to lunch with my friend who was involved with OUR. In the midst of her conversation, I'd brought up that I was interested in saving women and children who were victims of violence of sex trafficking. I did not know that she was involved with OUR. She told me she may have an opportunity for me to get involved with the organization. We chatted a little bit more, and she told me that she would reach out to her contact in the organization. At this point, I did not know who this person was or anything about the organization. A couple of weeks went by and I was contacted by Matthew Cooper, aka Coop. He is a male operator at OUR who works very closely with Tim. He had told me that they were doing some training, but that they would not be starting a new training course for a while. He asked if I'd be interested in being an actress for the other operators to practice scenarios with. I told him that I would rather be more directly involved and actually be the one to go out and save women and children. That was about all our phone call consisted of. He told me he would have contact with me at some point in the future. A couple of weeks went by and he reached out again. He asked me if I'd be willing to come up to the OUR gym and do a training session. I told him yes, absolutely. On October 28th of 2021, I went up to the OUR gym. When I got to the gym, Coop was waiting for me inside. There were a few other women there, as well as a girl named, and it's redacted, y'all, the girl that was there when she showed up. We did some basic training exercising involving self-defense and then covered some awareness tactics. At a certain point, Ballard arrived at the gym and I spoke with him one-on-one in a back room. When we spoke, he briefly told me about what the organization did and how I could potentially become involved. I expressed to him very clearly my interest in becoming an operator. He told me that it was a hard job and I'd have to be willing to do a lot of really potentially dangerous things. He said that I would see a lot of dark things as well as be in some very seedy and gross places. He touched briefly on the couples ruse as well and asked if that was something I'd be able to do. I told him that I was an actress and that I thought I could be quite good at being an operator. I then went back out after speaking with him for a bit longer. I continued doing some training with Coop and the other two girls that were at the gym. Ballard's son, Blaine, was also there doing some training with us. And let's just be clear, y'all. Blaine Ballard, which is Tim Ballard's son, I know he's a young adult. He's either between the ages of 18 and 20, okay? Just to give you some perspective on that. After the self-defense tactics, Ballard said that he thought we should continue training in a different way later that evening. He said that we would now take it up a level. They wanted to essentially test how well we would respond to certain uncomfortable or intense situations. He told us about using an app called Signal to communicate and how we had to be very careful with text messages. He said that we could not talk to anyone about this stuff ever. I signed an NDA as asked and left it there at the gym. I never received any type of copy of this. Y'all, that right there, the NDA, that's with the first alleged victim. Same thing with her, along with this one. We were told to meet later that night back at the gym. I believe it was around 10:30 p.m. that I arrived there. Coop and this woman whose name's been redacted, Ballard and I were all supposed to go out as first team. First team meant that we would be the ones to go inside the strip clubs and try to gather information from people as part of our training. There were two other men that I recall being there that night. They were on second team that night. Second team's job was to maintain communications and follow us around discreetly in a vehicle of their own. One of them was Ballard's son, Blaine. The other was an older gentleman, and I do not remember his name. Ballard and this woman, her name's redacted, were partners that night and met up at her apartment. They were supposed to take an Uber to meet us at the OUR gym after getting in character together. They missed their first Uber, and we were waiting around for a while. I think we ended up having to just meet them at the first strip club. We were supposed to pretend like we did not know them when we were in the clubs on the training operation. The second team was supposed to just follow us around and keep in contact via messages on the Signal app. We all had to constantly remain in character even while interacting on the app. Tim and this woman were partners for the couple's ruse training that night, and Coop and another woman and I were a throuple for the couple's ruse. Y'all, that's a threesome. While waiting to head out and start our training, at one point Ballard's son came over to talk with us. He had made a comment about how his dad had given him something to take, presumably some type of pill, but I'm unsure of what. He then said he felt high and was kind of laughing about it like it was no big deal. It really concerned me, though. I didn't like that we were supposed to be pretending this was a real-life scenario and that he would be out of it. If it was a real situation, potentially out of the country, whose lives depend on it, then I would be so anxious and scared. I would never be able to trust someone not in their right state of mind. Not to mention it disturbed me and was inappropriate that his dad had given it to him. At some point, I don't remember exactly when, Ballard told me that he would sometimes take something in order to deal with his stress and to help him get into character, as well as loosen him up. I drove with Coop to the strip clubs in Salt Lake City for this training. I don't remember the names of all the clubs and bars or the order, but I know we went to these clubs for sure. Trails Gentlemen's Club, Exotic Kitty Gentlemen's Club, the American Bush. We, Coop, and this woman and myself got there and went inside and sat down. I got an energy drink from the bar and we all sat in a booth together. I saw Ballard and this woman at the first strip club. The woman was sitting on Tim's lap and they were all over each other playing the part. Ballard was in character as Brian and wore those big glasses to disguise himself. Brian is his alter ego of sorts. The idea behind going to the strip club was for Coop and Ballard to see how well I could get information out of people and how I would respond to being in a darker environment around certain types of people. Ballard would point out people in the club and tell me to go try and either get their phone number, find out where they lived, or a variety of other questions. I don't remember how many strip clubs and bars we were exactly, but I think we went to 3 strip clubs, as well as regular bar at the beginning and then another bar at the end. No alcohol was consumed by anyone that I saw in my throuple. While at these clubs and bars, Coop and the woman and I would hold hands, sit next to each other, and just generally pretend to be a couple. Nothing overtly inappropriate ever happened while I was training with Coop. I felt like he was in character while still keeping things professional for the most part. If that had been what Ballard had wanted for the couple's ruse, it wouldn't have bothered me so much. His version was not that, unfortunately. During all of this, I occasionally saw Ballard and this woman. They acted out the couple's ruse as well, just more extreme. Lap sitting, going into private rooms in the back, dances, etc. At the last club we went to, this woman and Tim were in the back by themselves in a private room. Tim had asked this woman to give him a lap dance. She was supposed to show him that she could do the job, so even though she was hesitant, she did it in order to prove herself. She started giving him a lap dance, but shortly after she started, Ballard's son ended up coming inside. He walked into the club's back room and saw his dad and this woman together like that. It made me extremely upset because this woman had not wanted to do it in the first place and had been reassured multiple times that Ballard's son would not be coming inside or seeing them acting out the couple's ruse. This woman was freaking out a bit and came and told me what had happened. At this point, Ballard came out from the back room and talked to me in the club. He had his arms around me and we were chest to chest. We were talking more about the couple's ruse and what that would involve, as well as some other things like how his wife was going to kill him if she found out that their son Blaine had come to the strip club. I cannot remember exactly what else was said at that moment. Shortly after that, we went to one last bar. Ballard and this woman did not meet us there. After that last place, we decided to call it a night. I drove with Coop and this woman back to the OUR gym where we met up with Ballard and this woman. At this point, I think it was coming up on 4 a.m. Ballard told me I did a good job, then talked to us all about the night and how the experience only scratched the surface of what it would actually be like on an operation. Tim texted me the next day on October 29th of 2021 and said I was a badass and had done an awesome job the night before. He then asked me to come and meet him at the OUR American Fork office. And I told him that I would. On November 1st of 2021, I went up to the address he sent me. When I arrived, Ballard and Matthew Cooper were both there. Ballard asked me to come up to his office to speak with him privately. When we sat down, he started talking to me about the couple's ruse and how important it was, telling me exactly how intimate certain scenarios would be. He asked me over and over if I'd be willing to act out certain sexual acts, continually getting more explicit. Doing all of this, he made it clear that I could not tell anyone about the things that were happening between us. He made it seem like it could be a life or death situation if I disclosed information, and or that I would get into trouble as well. He also made it seem like it could be a life or death situation if I was not willing or able to act out certain sex acts as well enough. This is when he started pushing the idea of needing to practice with each other. He started telling me about other female operators and how they had been in situations where they had to be completely naked in the rooms in front of each other while getting massages. He told me that the point of the couple's ruse was for you to be able to block each other, meaning that on operations you would intercept sexual touches from traffickers or sex workers. He started to become explicit with the situations that had happened or that could happen. He told me that he wanted to train me to be his new primary partner on the operations. I'd be paid for my time as a contractor with the organization. He said that operators before me had fallen in love with him, that some had tried to climb into his bed at the safe house, and that they had pushed for relationships with him. He told me that other partners before me had gone a bit crazy and he had to end things. I knew he was married, and he said because of that, he had one rule for the couple's ruse, which was no kissing on the lips. He made it seem that everything else besides maybe full-on penetrating sex would potentially be expected. During all of this, I felt like everything was a test. Every question or action was proving myself. I had briefly gotten into my personal background with him and explained why helping on operations as an operator was so important to me. Saving women and children truly meant so much to me as a person on a personal level. I wanted to make a difference. I've been a long-time supporter of OUR and knew that's what I wanted my future to involve. Now, let's stop there for a minute. Okay, she said she'd been a long-time supporter. But she says at the beginning that she didn't know him, and he's the founder. And she also says that she says, at this point, I did not know who this person was or anything about this organization. So how can she turn around and say that she'd been a long-time supporter of OUR? These are the discrepancies that are really, they're jumping off the page. I'm not saying this woman is lying all through her teeth. I'm just saying if this stuff happened, maybe she's saying this to make it look like, well, I did what I did and I hate what happened, but I want to try to sugarcoat it by saying I just was supportive of this. The bottom line is she says at the beginning she didn't know nothing about the organization. Now she's saying that she's been a long-time supporter of OUR. So there's the discrepancy. And, it is what it is. Tim then asked me some personal questions about my life, like if I was married, if I had my own place, and other things of that nature. Also, y'all want to point out that she started to let him in on her personal life before he even asked the questions. She's already said, I briefly got into my personal background with him and explained why, yada, 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 right? Well, that's where a grooming process takes place. They find out what your weaknesses are, as in the other alleged operator. She talked about her own personal experiences and stuff. They look at that. They look if you've had any trauma in the background, these groomers do, and they basically take advantage of it. But he also, just like the first victim, he does ask questions about her marriage, her personal life, if she had her own place, other things of that nature. So again, there are similarities, but then there are discrepancies. Tim then became more open about things that could happen or that I could expect on operations, and that I would have to be willing to do things in order to save children. This included being naked in front of each other, touching each other, imitating sex acts, talking dirty to each other, and all sorts of things of that nature. It was presented to me as, quote, if we were in a life or death situation, would you be willing to do X, Y, Z, unquote. And of course, if it came down to saving women and children, I'd be willing to do it. If it was a life or death situation, I would be willing to do whatever I had to do. For him, he said if he was going to get a new partner, he needed to be able to practice. He would say that it was really important for us to have intense chemistry. He wanted to know if I was attracted to him and wanted to make sure that he would be able to turn me on. I was really uncomfortable with these questions, obviously, but at the time in my mind, I felt like it was a test, and I didn't want to fail the test. I wanted to become part of the team. Things then proceeded to become physical. It started out with him just resting his hand on my knee. Then he started running his hands across my legs. He slowly started to become more comfortable and was running his hands all the way up my thighs. We were sitting in chairs facing each other at this point and were no longer talking. I was pretty shocked he was touching me so intimately. I guess in my mind I hadn't thought that he would begin practicing then. I guess I had assumed that he wouldn't need or want to practice until at least we were heading on an operation. He moved closer to me and started to run his hands along other parts of my body. I remember there was a lot of touching, rubbing, and grabbing with his hands across pretty much my entire body. At this point, I remember then being pushed up against the office door. Ballard was up against me, and he was sort of grinding his body against mine. It was obvious that he had an erection. At one point, his thigh was kind of pressed in between my legs and kind of moving up and down against me. There was no kissing on the lips, seeing as that was his rule, but there was a lot of kissing and mouthing movements around my shoulders and neck and other parts of my body. At this point, I was very uncomfortable, but again, I felt like I could not fail this test. I needed to prove that I could handle what he was doing. If I was not strong enough to handle this and deal with this, then I would not be able to go out and rescue women and children, and that was not an option for me. I wanted so badly to be able to be part of the organization, but still, I was so unbelievably uncomfortable. I didn't understand why we had to be practicing right then. I mean, we weren't on an operation. He had only met me one time before this, and it hadn't made sense to me that he felt like we needed to practice this now. Things were moving so quickly, physically, and I hadn't done any sort of training. It was all happening really fast. He then slowly worked his way down my body until he was kind of kneeling down in front of me and was pulling at my jeans a bit. He then lifted up my shirt and was licking and kissing my stomach and getting lower on my body, still tugging at my jeans as if gauging my reaction. At this point, the door was pushed open from the outside and he had to back up away from me. Cooper pushed open the door and came inside, was just looking at us both. Tim kind of just played it off casually. I did not know what to say or do. I felt like Cooper knew exactly what was going on. I could just see it on his face. It seemed like he was unhappy with the situation he walked in on. He didn't say anything or ask any questions, though. Cooper wanted to speak to Ballard then, I believe, and Ballard told him that we would be coming downstairs soon. Cooper gave us another look and then left and shut the door behind us. We talked for a minute longer, and Ballard tried to start things physically again, but I had to leave for an appointment, and I used that as an excuse to leave. Ballard then began to question me about how I had felt about things. He wanted to know if I'd been turned on during that or if I was still turned on and worked up. He wanted to know if I was attracted to him physically as well and if he was good looking. I didn't quite know how to answer those questions, so I told him something along the lines of, "Yeah, you're handsome. You're a handsome man." It all felt like a test to me, so I tried to say what he wanted to hear and react the right way. I kept thinking about how he had a government background and that they had probably taught him these techniques and that I should trust him. He told me he was really attracted to me. He told me that he wanted to have me do more training and that the next training would be even more intense. He asked if I had a couple of days available, possibly in November, to go and do a training weekend with him. He didn't specify if other operators would be going as well. He told me he wanted me to start coming on operations with him soon. He then made it clear that he would want and need to practice more physical things like we had just done. I told him that I was an actress and I did this for a profession, so practicing wasn't necessarily needed on my part. I tried to say these things delicately as I did not want to offend him and jeopardize my chances of becoming an operator. He told me that practicing was fun and that it helped keep your relationship more exciting. He said in order for the couple's ruse and operations to be sustainable, it has to be fun. I immediately felt sick to my stomach, dirty and panicked. I'd been warned that I couldn't talk to people about things that had happened. I'd signed an NDA and I was really anxious about breaking it. I also didn't want to lose my opportunity to work on operations. I called my friend and told her I was really nervous to speak with her, but I felt like I needed to tell her something. I felt safer talking to her because Ballard knew she had been the one to get me involved with him and the organization and hadn't minded me asking her certain questions before. She was the only person he seemed okay with me communicating with about certain things. I knew he would not want me telling her what had just happened between us. It was supposed to be too secret between us, Ballard and myself. I told her I was scared to talk about it over the phone, and she told me that I could come and stop by her house later that evening. Over the phone, though, I did briefly tell her a few things that had happened in the office with Ballard. She seemed pretty shocked and did not think that's what had happened was normal or good. But I did not tell her a whole lot because I was really worried of the idea of getting in trouble or messing anything up. She reassured me that it was okay to stand firm about not wanting to perform any more sexual acts with him, even for the sake of practicing for an operation. I knew my talent as an actress and knew I didn't need to. I went to my appointment and Ballard messaged me asking when I was coming back. I told him I wasn't sure if I'd be able to. He asked again if I would be coming back that night or not. I told him that I would if I could. After my appointment, I went back up to the OUR office. At that point, I was resolved on telling him that I would not or need to practice any more sexual acts with him. I went back, and when I got there, Cooper wanted to speak with me. So we sat down in the office, and he asked me some questions about the night before when we had gone to the strip once, and about how I was feeling about things. I wanted to be honest with him, so I was. I told him that I was worried about Ballard a bit. I didn't get into any details because I knew that he was friends with Ballard, and I was worried about him not being happy with what I said or jeopardizing my role in the organization. I did tell him that I felt like Ballard needed some help. I told him I felt like Ballard had seen a lot of things that were probably messing with his mental state a bit. I told him that I felt like Ballard, as well as other operators, needed to talk to somebody, that they needed to see a therapist and work through some of these issues. I was really worried for Ballard's mental state at that point because of the pills and the way he was acting, the things I had heard, and the sexual situation that had happened already without us even being on an operation. Cooper did not necessarily disagree with me, but he also didn't agree with me. I then met with Tim again privately, and he started with wanting to practice some more and saying basically that in the near future we need to keep practicing consistently in order to be a secure team together. I didn't want to make him too upset or offend him, but at this point I just genuinely wanted him to seek help for his mental health's sake. I told him that I was worried about the things he had seen as an operator and hoped he had someone to talk to. I told him that I was worried that operations and the things he had been exposed to were negatively impacting his mental health. I told him that for the sake of his wife, Catherine, that I didn't think it was right to practice like that. I told him that us practicing sexual acts was not necessary. I reiterated that as an actress it was not needed, that I can turn it off and on as needed for the sake of the situation we were in at any given moment. That's what an actress does with all the emotions or actions in scenes. He asked at some point something about if I had my own apartment, and that going there would be an easier place to get more comfortable with each other. I don't remember at what point in these conversations that was. At the time, since I was going through a divorce, I was living with my family and did not have my own place, which I let him know that. I don't remember exactly all the things we continued to talk about, but I think it was pretty much the same as earlier. We then were done. I don't remember the exact timing here, but at some point Cooper talked to Ballard and Cooper told him what I had said about him potentially seeing a therapist or seeking mental health. Ballard then confronted me and said, "Oh, I heard you think I'm crazy. I heard you told Cooper that I'm losing my mind, that I'm completely crazy." Something along those lines. I told him, "No, I didn't say that I think you're crazy. I just think that seeking therapy for some of the things you have seen should be a priority for not only you, but your entire team." I then threw out some ideas about how to better protect people on operations. I found out that no one is allowed to carry any type of weapon on them and that no one has any tracking devices in their phones or on their persons. I told them my opinion was for the sake of the safety of their operators, especially the female ones that could potentially then be trafficked, that it was important for them to seek some better safety methods. Up until this point in my conversations with Ballard, I had not even really been spoken to much about safety tactics on operations. Really, almost all of what Tim spoke to me about the whole time I was there was the couple's ruse, sexual acts, and all the things I'd need to be prepared and willing to do for him. As I was getting ready to leave, they made it seem like they would be in contact in the next couple of days to continue training. I told him that I would be going out of town, but that we could plan something after that. I was prepared to keep working with him and be his new partner on the operations if he would stop pushing the sexual practicing aspect and get some professional help. I still wanted this working relationship to work out so that I could make a difference in the world by saving kids. I then left and called and asked, and it's redacted, a woman's name, if I could stop by her house and speak with her. When I stopped by her house, I told her all the things that had happened and asked her to please not tell anyone that I had told her. I was and still am very much nervous. She reassured me that the things that had happened she did not think were okay and that I needed to stand my ground with him and no longer practice the couple's ruse unless we were actively on an operation and it became necessary. I then left her house and went home. I reached out to Ballard about when we would be able to meet up next when I was back in town. I was then invited to go to an OUR gala, and I told him that I would not be able to go. The last I heard from Ballard and Cooper was on November 11th of 2021. Tim told me he had talked to his family and team and would no longer be going on ops. Now, she's got the date of when he says, "I'm not going on any more ops." Well, these alleged victims, some of them, this was after that. So he's just telling her that. This is something he said to the other women as well after they stood up to him in some way or another. When he realized he couldn't control or manipulate me any further sexually, he no longer wanted me as his partner. Cooper called me and told me he would be back in the country soon and would keep training me. A couple of weeks went by and I still hadn't heard from them about coming back to do more training and go on an operation like we had planned. I reached out a few times to just Cooper and finally he called me back. He made excuses for why he hadn't started my training again, but promised he would reach out in a few weeks. He never did. I tried to reach out once more and got no reply. At this point, I realized they had both shut me out. I can't even tell you how disappointed I was. I wanted to make a difference so bad. I had put so much hope into this new future. I had anticipated being paid for this new venture, but more than that, I would have been able to impact with a positive change. To have that taken away because I didn't want to practice sexual things and keep being physical with Tim Ballard hurt. All right, y'all. So the next pre-record will be another alleged victim. Leave your comments on what you think. Again, as I go through these alleged victims' narratives, in the federal lawsuit. There are discrepancies. And the next recorded alleged victim that we will discuss, I've saved this one. We'll get to it. There's just so much there that doesn't add up. You know as well as I do that Tim Ballard, he has done some of this stuff. But the question is what's real and what is a lie? And so we have to look at this and really see what it comes to, basically. So leave your comments. We'll get to the next pre-record soon. I love you all. And as always, keep on looking.